Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, and normally this is where I would say that I'm the game master. But for this particular game, it's kind of a mess, honestly. We had multiple GMs running portions of this over a multiple year span of time. Um, I should probably give a shout out to Wayne Birch, who started this ball rolling in the 80s. Wayne owned the Collection Connection, which was the comic shop where all of us kids would hang out. After Wayne had kind of handed it off, Greg Sheets ran it for a while. In the 90s, Howard Warnes added to the Oz-Wonderland War. In more recent years, I have contributed to it, some bringing in ideas from other comic books like Fables. So this one's got a lot going on. And before we really get into it, make sure you smash that like button, check to see if you're still subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment. That helps us out on our end with the YouTube algorithm, but also we just love hearing from you guys. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to today's game begins hundreds of years ago when an elderly, impoverished woodworker named Geppetto creates a wooden puppet named Pinocchio. The blue fairy turns him into a real boy, and then Pinocchio abandons his father and wanders the world. So Geppetto is heartbroken and he starts to make more children, right? Basically, younger brothers and sisters of Pinocchio. And word of this spreads. And so eventually, the townsfolk come to Geppetto because there's a nobleman ruling over him and he's cruel. And so their idea is let's kill this guy. You can carve a replacement of him. And in terms of this feudal system that they're in, right, where that guy has to answer to those who are above him, those guys will never be the wiser. And the whole time, this guy will actually answer to Geppetto and it will solve their problems. So Geppetto does it. And this is the beginning of a slippery slope for Geppetto. He starts to replace more and more members of royalty with his loyal puppet doppelgangers. And slowly but surely, Geppetto begins to conquer the home world from fables. And the surviving denizens of these fairy tale realms undergo a great exodus to Earth. And the ones who can't pass for human end up in a location in upstate New York called the farm, while those who can pass themselves off as human take up residence in New York City. And a lot of them begin to live in the woodland luxury apartments in Manhattan. And that brings us to the main plot of today's game, which actually takes place during the crisis on Infinite Earths. The anti-monitor is this massive cosmic being who has this wall of antimatter that is expanding and spreading through the multiverse, and it's threatening every dimension, right? Including these fairy tale realms like Oz and Wonderland and Neverland and stuff like that. And so, as such, many of the citizens of Oz and Wonderland begin to flee to Earth. not knowing that Earth is also threatened. So, in Central Park in New York City, there are several attractions ranging from carnival rides to a fun house. And one of the mirrors here acts like a portal from Wonderland to Earth. And as such, there's a young girl named Alice who goes through the looking glass and tries to warn her homeworld what's coming. But none of the New Yorkers take her seriously. And so everything up until now sets things up. And it was at this point that each of the player characters, for one reason or another, all find themselves in Central Park to really begin the adventure, right? So Superboy is here, and he's the son of Superman, and his mom was one of the four super women that Brainiac abducted a while back. And if anybody's curious about him, I can direct you to which video gives you his origin story and stuff like that. Spider-Man is also here. And he is still wearing the black costume that he got during the Secret Wars. Another hero that is here is named Spirit Knight, and he wears a red, white, and blue costume that kind of looks like what Moon Knight wears. Ronan is here. He's our token martial artist in this adventure. Ironclad is one of the heroes. He's a lot like Colossus. And then finally, there's the Adapter, who is basically a heroic version of characters like the Amazo, like Amazo or the Super Adaptoid. So when the Adapter meets Superboy, the first thing he does is copy his powers. Anyways, so all the player characters, all the heroes, notice a frantic blonde-haired girl wearing a blue Victorian dress with a pristine white apron. So they go to where she is, sort of gets party together, and then she warns them what's going on. Just then, a group of card soldiers show up, but they're two-dimensional. So as the fighting begins, one of these playing card guys uses an attack that kind of looks like a karate chop on Ronan's katana, and his two-dimensional hand slices between the molecules that make up the sword's blade. So it cuts the sword in half. And this also sort of signaled the players that, like, these guys are really bad news. You can't let them touch you. They're not going to do damage in the traditional sense. They're going to slice right through your matter, right? And as if that wasn't bad enough, the flying monkeys of Oz then appear and they start fighting the playing card warriors. Also, by the way, before we get too into it, we're using the word monkey very loosely. Some are gorillas, some are chimpanzees. Apes would probably be the better term, but since they always refer to the characters in the Wizard of Oz stories as the flying monkeys, we just did too, even though it's incorrect. And each one of them has bat wings that are the same shade of brown that the ape's hair is. So right away, the players understood that while this is going to be a fairy tale themed adventure, they should imagine it through the lens of like a horror movie, right? And the battle here is long and horrible, with Adapter actually losing an arm at one point and having to sub his adaptation power to regrow it. For the most part, the flying monkeys kill all of the card soldiers, partially because the apes are more agile. So when the cards try to use that two-dimensional karate chop, the various apes dodge it, right? Spider-Man then webs up the surviving apes, and the heroes lock them in a cage at the Central Park Zoo for now. Alice then takes the superheroes through the looking glass to Wonderland. And when they pass through the mirror and come out the other side, Superboy notices that his S symbol on his chest is backwards now, as if he was a mere reflection of himself as long as he's in Wonderland. Anyway, so the superheroes are led by Alice, to where the Queen of Hearts is. And they don't realize this yet, but the real Queen of Hearts always wanted to decapitate people willy-nilly, right? So Geppetto had his puppets assassinate her, and he carved a duplicate of her, who the blue fairy, who Geppetto imprisoned, by the way, was then forced to bring to life. So while Moonchild, Geppetto, and Dorothy Gale are here, the player characters are told that they are guests, and they don't think it's anything more than that. They don't know that Geppetto is secretly the power behind the throne. And because of all of this, the Queen of Hearts never says off with their heads, which several of the heroes who are familiar with the fairy tales in question here, it makes them think that this is odd, right? So the seed of suspicion has been planted. Anyways, the false Queen of Hearts tells the heroes that there is a white wall that has appeared at the far end of Wonderland, destroying everything it touches. Moonchild, who by the way is also known as the childlike empress, says she is from a realm called Fantasia, and they too have this antimatter wall destroying everything there, turning everything into nothing. Superboy says they better hurry then, but Geppetto comments that time doesn't work here like it does on Earth. That's why Alice and Dorothy are still young after all these years. Dorothy tells the player characters that in Oz, there's a villain named the Gnome King who saw this crisis as an opportunity. Dorothy tries to explain that everyone on Earth has a fairy tale counterpart, and that her counterpart is Princess Ozma, who the land of Oz was named after. Ronan says he doesn't get it. So Moonchild, aka the childlike empress, tries to explain to the player characters that last year she met a boy from Earth named Bastion Bucks, who was about the same age as Superboy. But in her world, his counterpart was a warrior named Atreyu. Spider-Man says, talk about weird. Dorothy Gale explains that while she's just a normal girl from Earth, her counterpart is actually extremely powerful. And the Gnome King stole her magic belt, as well as the golden cap, which allows the user to command the flying monkeys. The Gnome King transformed Princess Ozma, Glinda the Good, and the Wizard of Oz into knickknacks. Then he hid each of these items somewhere in Oz. Dorothy says if the heroes can recover the items and restore them to their former state, those powerful beings may be able to help stop the walls of nothingness from consuming the aforementioned realms. Superboy asks how the Wizard of Oz, Glinda the Good, and Ozma were even defeated in the first place if they're so powerful. Dorothy explains that the magic belt grants its wearer one wish a day. Now, so on top of everything else that's going on, Superboy says that his mom died and he misses her more than anything. So he wants to use the magic belt's daily wish to bring her back. The adapter says they need to wish for the crisis to stop. Basically, Everybody has a wish that they want granted, and they don't all line up. The Queen of Hearts tells the heroes to just focus on turning the various objects back into the people they used to be and worry about wishes later. So the Cheshire Cat joins the party, and she has teleportation and dimension travel. So she takes the heroes to Gillikin country, just north of the Emerald City. And while there, they encounter a monster called a Gigabow. It is a fearsome creature from the land of Mo. Its body is round with a thick shell like a turtle. Its head is supported by a long goose-like neck, and it has 4 mouths and 7 bright, glittering eyes that are colored red, green, yellow, blue, black, purple, and crimson. It has 10 short, thick legs and 2 arms with claws like a lobster that are strong enough to pinch a tree in half. Spirit Knight and Ronin have the lowest body attributes of anybody here, so they hang back. Spirit Knight uses energy blasts, while Ronin switches over to his bow and arrows. Everyone else gets in close. Superboy taunts the monster into using one of those lobster claws on him, since he's strong enough that it can't hurt him. And as long as it has a hold of him, then that claw can't go after any of his teammates. Since the adapter can literally duplicate Superboy's powers and attributes, he sees that and he does the same thing. And after a while, the heroes kill the monster. Spider-Man suggests they not kill monsters that they encounter, and Superboy seconds it. But Ronin says that samurai and ninja kill their enemies all the time, and they're awesome. Spider-Man argues against it. Ronin says police and soldiers kill, and they're heroes. He says that speaking out against such people is wrong. So again, we have this situation where the heroes just keep arguing amongst themselves. Also here in Gillikin country is a monster of Mo known as a purple dragon, which has skin that's as tough as iron, wings that are more bird-like than reptilian, and a head somewhat like that of a hippopotamus. So the heroes stop arguing and they fight this monster too. And in the end, Ironclad lands the killing blow. The heroes then search the area and they find a purple statue of a cow, but it's not weathered like everything else here is. The purple cow looks brand new, so Dorothy touches it and she says, Oz. And then there's a flash of light and it is transformed into her old friend, the Cowardly Lion. Spirit Knight says, hold up. I thought we were here looking for powerful mages that could help stop the crisis. Dorothy admits that while those people were turned into objects by the Gnome King, so too were her friends, the lion, the scarecrow, and the Tin Man. The heroes groan because this now sounds like twice as much work as they thought it was going to be. The Cheshire Cat then teleports everyone back to the Garden of the Queen of Hearts, where the Queen and Geppetto are playing croquet with pink flamingos. As they do this, the Gnome King is gazing through Ozma's magic painting, which acts like a crystal ball, and he can use it to see what the heroes are up to. He talks to himself, and a red-haired girl named Jellia overhears what he's saying. Jelly has been forced to serve the Gnome King against her will. So when she hears him muttering anything important to himself, she passes it along. So then the news makes its way back to the Queen of Hearts. So in other words, the Queen of Hearts tells the heroes where to go and what to do. And they retrieve a character, bring that character back to her, at which point she then tells them the next place to go and what to look for. So insert joke about railroading here. Anyways, so the next stop is the poppy field to rescue the scarecrow who has been turned into a statue that looks like either Tweedledee or Tweedledum. Since they look alike, it's hard to know which one it's supposed to be. And since the game master, which in this case was Wayne, wrote the adventure before the players decided which characters they were going to be, that he didn't take into account that Spirit Knight could simply substitute his sorcery for cell rot and kill the poppies. I could be really long-winded about it, but suffice it to say, the poppies were intended to be a difficult trap to get around, and cell rot kind of ruined the whole encounter. The Scarecrow is turned back to normal, and the Cheshire Cat teleports everyone back to the Queen of Hearts. And when they get there, more characters keep showing up, like a clockwork man called Tick Tock from Oz, and an elderly white knight from Wonderland. As a brief aside, when we would play a role playing game at the comic book store, other customers would overhear it, get interested, and then they would want to play too. So you'll often notice characters that seem to join a party, like TikTok, only to then disappear again later on. So what's going on is it's customers who got in on the gaming and then they left. Anyways, so the heroes head west to Winky Country, where they find the castle of the Wicked Witch, who Dorothy says she melted using water. Ronan is quick to tell Spider-Man that Dorothy killed someone, and that was cool. So therefore, Ronan killing purple dragons and stuff is also fine. So as they argue, the Gnome King sees this through the magic painting, and then he uses the golden cap to command the flying monkeys to attack. So they do, and we get another massive battle here. But the heroes are all pretty much heavy hitters, so for the most part, they defeat the platoon of the apes. They search the castle of the Wicked Witch of the West, and they find a yellow coat rack, and Dorothy touches it, saying Oz, and it turns back into the Tin Man. An annoyed Gnome King then summons a kaiju-sized iron golem armed with a colossal warhammer. TikTok says that both he and the golem were crafted by the same creator, and as such, he knows that this gigantic Iron Man has what is basically the steampunk version of an off switch on the back of his head. Superboy tries to fly up and turn it off, but this is when we learn that Superboy actually has a catastrophic fear of heights and needs to roll an 18 or higher to shut off the golem. And he fails his roll by quite a bit. So the adapter copies Superboy's flight, but not his fears. And then the adapter shuts the giant off. Spider-Man asks how it happens that someone who can fly is afraid of heights. Superboy says that he was afraid of heights before he developed flight powers, and that your powers and your personality don't always match up. Adapter says that perhaps with time, Superboy will conquer his fears. And Ronan adds that Superboy should just keep flying till he gets over it. Cheshire Cat then teleports the heroes back to the Queen of Hearts, where the Tin Man is reunited with the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion. Next, the Cheshire Cat takes the heroes to the Forest of Fighting Trees. And here, the trees throw apples at the superheroes, so the heroes fight back. And as before, the heroes are pretty powerful. So guys like Ironclad just punch trees into smithereens, while Spirit Knight threatens to start a forest fire. So the trees clear a path. And while they still have bad attitudes, they don't physically fight the player characters. In the center of this bizarre forest, the heroes come face to face with the Jabberwock, a huge green reptilian thing. It has a flat face and buck teeth, elongated xenomorph-like fingers that each end in a long claw, green dragon-like wings, and a long tail. So they fight the Jabberwock and it rips the Scarecrow apart. So the Tin Man cuts off the monster's head with his axe. The Jabberwock was guarding two ruby slippers, and the heroes can't decide which one is Glenda. But eventually they figure it out, touch the correct slipper, and she's returned to normal. And as it turns out, the other shoe is her good sister. So they return her to normal as well. Next is the Deadly Desert, where Adapter goes after Superboy fails yet another roll versus his phobia. Adapter finds a small statue of a white whale and he brings it back to Dorothy, who touches it and says, Oz, transforming it back into the Wizard of Oz. Glinda the Good summons the golden cap, which Ronan then uses and commands the flying monkeys to grab all the gnomes and drop them into the deadly desert, which they start to do. Of course, a massive gnomish monkey war breaks out, and the Gnome King finds himself attacked by flying monkeys. As he tries to fight them all off, the heroes show up and fight him while he's distracted. Superboy steals the magic belt that grants the wearer one wish per day, and he wishes that he had his mom back. So his mother, Superwoman, appears, and the other heroes tell Superboy that that was selfish, and he should have wished for the crisis to be averted. Superboy tells them he'll give them the belt, and they can wish for that. But he thought that if he didn't bring back his mom now, they'd come up with some excuse why it couldn't be done later. And honestly, he's not far off. Glinda takes the belt and uses it to figure out where Ozma is. And as it turns out, the Gnome King hid his original green crown, and the green crown he's wearing now is a duplicate, but it is also Ozma. So Dorothy touches the Gnome King's crown and says Oz, and that changes Ozma back. So together, everyone fights the Gnome King and defeats him. But when the smoke clears, literally, Glinda, her sister, and the Wizard of Oz are all gone. And Ozma uses her powers to send everyone home, which brings us to the epilogue of this game. Superwoman, Superboy, Spirit Knight, Spider-Man, Ronan, Ironclad, Dorothy, Alice, and the Adapter find themselves in Central Park. For a second, some of them wonder if that really happened or not. Adapter suggests that the Batman villain known as the Mad Hatter may have used some sort of mind control on them. But Alice and Dorothy are back on Earth again, long after they left, and bewildered as to how much things have changed over the years. And the flying monkeys are still in the Central Park Zoo cages. Speaking of which, the New York Police Department are at the zoo looking at the weird winged apes and talking with a zookeeper who sees the heroes and points at them. Spider-Man says that's his cue to leave. And Ironclad says he's not afraid of the cops. Spider-Man addresses Spirit Knight, Ronan, Ironclad, and the Adapter, saying, Great, then you guys can go confess to all that murdering you just did. Spider-Man looks over at Superboy, though, who's just glad to have his mom back, by the way. And Spider-Man says, But not you, kid. You're all right. If you ever want to team up, let me know. Then Spider-Man shoots a web and swings off into the New York skyline. Superboy and Superwoman go home together, and the other group of superheroes decide to stick together working as a team. But since they already got off on the wrong foot with the East Coast superhero community, they agree to fight crime on the West Coast instead. And they do. They are soon joined by an Iron Man style hero named Gordon Reed, who's the inventor of the Shadow Armor. And in 1989, during a massive alien invasion, they are the superhero team who single handedly saved Los Angeles by taking down a massive mothership. But that's a story for another day. We enjoyed playing this. Hopefully, you enjoyed hearing about it. If so, as always, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure.